Do we have a clear picture of what exactly we're aiming at before we leave the lockdowns or before the measures are lifted? And is anyone really taking check to see if the measures are having any real effect on the COVID infection rates? And if the effect the measures are having on the rates is worth it for the effect that it is having on the economy and on people's lives? Yes, I know that it's a balance between saving lives and saving the economy. But at the end of the day, we need to understand that the economy does have an impact on lives, a literal impact. And we're seeing two opposition leaders in the Caribbean calling now and asking, one, for an ease up on the citizens as they see their numbers in a decline, and the other is asking that there be no stricter measures put on the citizens because the citizens aren't in a position to take any more. The opposition leaders, at least the one over here in Trinidad, often gets quite a bit of a licking for sounding just like opposing for opposing's sake, and I guess that's the nature of our very partisan politics over here. But this is a point that is worth making, and this is what I think is the true position of the opposition leader and what they are supposed to be calling for. That they are supposed to be asking the government and trying to get the government to keep a balance in each measure that the government does. So even if the government has a grand idea of going to the moon, they may ask, what about what is happening here on Earth? And that's the measure of the opposition. They are there for the counterbalance. And I think these are the questions that the opposition should be asking, because we see that contractors within the construction industry are asking about monies and how they are going to make it through these extended lockdown periods, because there isn't any clear indication as where they're going to get sustenance from. And more industries are coming out and requesting help, because as the lockdown measures continue to go on, you would see more and more people being stretched thinner and thinner and thinner. And if you keep stretching some people, eventually they're going to snap. And this effect is felt for the vast majority and the lower classes. And it's not just a matter of appealing to populist mindsets and saying we're aiming to help the lower classes. Just out of the goodness of your heart, you should be aiming to help people who you may see as less fortunate than you. But even in the selfish sense, if you're better off, you must consider that people in the less fortunate situations, if they find themselves in the most true sense of desperation, they're going to start to take it out on anyone they find. What is required to keep this pandemic in control is some measure of discipline. And in order to keep this discipline, you need to have people that are willing to listen and people that see the reward in listening to what they are doing. And for people to see the reward in listening, then most likely you're going to have to find some way to pay them to stay home. And that creates its own set of problems, but what are the other options really and truly? Even though we are doing the lockdown measures and we say this is to help this situation, can we look at the numbers? Can we look at the data that is being presented and see that the numbers are decreasing? And if the numbers are decreasing, can we attribute this decrease to the lockdown measures? And shouldn't we be trying to pinpoint where exactly we are seeing the biggest changes and the biggest effect? And maybe we can direct measures towards that specific area and allow more of the country to function. There are many people that seem not to understand that when some people do not work, they do not earn money. And money isn't just to get luxuries for these people. They aren't living in the comfort of somewhere where all the other needs are met. Sometimes they need this money to live, and they need this money to help other people to live also. So work isn't trivial, and keeping people out of work isn't trivial. And if you cannot help them to keep sustained, then you best be very sure that the measures that you are putting into place are effective to the conclusion that you see and that we all are trying to get towards. As we get into all of this, don't forget to like the video. If you haven't liked it yet, drop a comment, tell me what you think. Start a discussion. I'm seeing some really interesting discussions starting now. And I think that's what the Caribbean region and our country in particular needs more of. Create some discussions where we try to learn more from each other and see if we can create some progress in our own country. So we get into it. Ease up now government tool, and this is out of Barbados. Barbados today Government needs to elaborate on and better justify its position with respect to the continued closure of commercial businesses on Sundays and bank holidays. Bishop Atherley, their opposition leader over in Barbados, said, "I think the country is craving an explanation as to why the regulation persists with the trends going in the direction which they seem to be. I think government simply needs to better explain its position," Bishop Atherley said. In Barbados' case, the benefit with them is that they're currently seeing a decrease in their cases. And that's great. They're seeing their case numbers drop, and they're seeing a trend towards less cases. And at this moment, they're still under these strict lockdowns and even lockdowns during Sundays and bank holidays. And they're asking why. If the country is currently in crisis and the medical staff is pulled thin, it would make sense that the country is in lockdown so that authorities can more clearly see to do what they need to do. And that can make sense. If you want to argue arguments about freedom, etc., you're free to argue it about that. But in the case of how our governments are made and structured, that makes perfect sense. When the crisis is in the middle of it, if the government says this is a measure to decrease this and this is how this measure will decrease it, it makes sense. But as you go through this crisis, and as in Barbados' case, they're seeing their numbers decrease, you must ask, why are these measures still in place? And right across the Caribbean Sea in Trinidad, our opposition leader is also making claims on behalf of the people and on behalf of working people and people currently struggling under the financial strains of lockdown measures. The opposition United National Congress does not support a call for harsher lockdowns to treat with the current wave of COVID-19 cases, opposition leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar said yesterday. And this is in response to the call by some members within the business community that they would like to see even harsher lockdown measures. She added that the non-essential working population is already at their wits' end, and as to how they are going to meet their rent, light and water bills, mortgage payments, loan installments, and even grocery bills at the end of the month. Persad-Bissessar said the government may deem them non-essential, but the fact is these citizens' ability to earn a salary is very essential to their survival. And I agree with that statement. I remember listening to one of the press conferences, and I believe it was the Prime Minister himself saying that the movies are non-essential and we don't really need to go to the movies. Why are we making a fuss about it? And I think he was taking that from the wrong angle. The people that may be going to watch a movie may not need to go to the movie. That's a luxury to them. But the people working in the movie theater, their job is very essential. Their job feels just as essential pretty much as just about anybody else's job. A policeman's job is essential maybe in its function, but to him in terms of earning a salary, it's as essential as anyone else working a job. So in terms of people and how they feel about working and not working and losing their jobs, it's as essential to everyone as it is to everyone. So right now there is an imbalance. And if we need to maintain this imbalance, I think we need to help citizens out. And that's part of what the opposition leader is calling for. I call on them to overhaul the system forthwith, because she's saying that she argued that the government's plan for relief are not on par with what is needed to immediately relieve the burdens borne by people. She asks that they put plans in place to fast-track approval and disbursement of grants and other forms of assistance to deal with the plight of the poor. The government must engage in much wider stakeholder consultation, she said. And our opposition leader went on there to wax very populist and making the argument for the common man. More than ever, it is apparent that we are not all in the same boat. And I feel like I should be reading this with a legendary voice. Only the same storm. Some have yachts, others have rafts, and others are drowning. The people suffering the most are the poor, construction workers, domestic workers, food service workers, migrants, etc. Harsher lockdowns will not save them, only vaccines, and allowing them to work again under improved health guidelines will do so. She continued, harsher lockdowns against non-essential workers and the poor without a holistic plan, without adequate vaccines, without prompt social support, and without locking our porous maritime borders cannot reduce COVID-19, but will only increase suffering. What we need to see for these lockdown measures to continue is we need to see a clear exit plan, and the exit plan that we are saying that we are looking for are the vaccines. So we need to see the clear vaccine plans. The government to give them some credit, is giving some information on this and seeing that they are trying their best. And on the international market, the vaccines are going through some battle of the bourgeoisie, and the higher ups are getting while the lower downs aren't getting. So, okay, that exit plan argument, I can understand that we may have a bit of obscurity in that, and it's not totally the government's fault. But in the current situation, we need to have something to sustain the workers that are home. And the government keeps boasting that they have these measures covered, but evidently they do not. Contractors lobby Young for help for construction workers. The Trinidad and Tobago Contractors Association has asked Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Stuart Young, to allow construction workers to qualify for the salary relief grant for individuals who lost their income during the current restrictions aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19. And I urge you, if you have the time, come and read this article and see how the Contractors Association messaged the ministers multiple times requesting some assistance for the construction workers. Because what is currently happening, the government says that they have measures in place to allow for grants for people who aren't working and for people who cannot work right now. So those who have NIS numbers go get help from the Ministry of Finance. And those who do not have an NIS number, they get help from the Ministry of Social Development. Now, for those who may not know, the NIS number is your national insurance number. It's a nationalized insurance program. So we are supposed to have a pretty secure state setup insurance. And construction workers now find themselves in this unique position that many of them, probably the majority of construction workers, they do pay NIS fees, but they are not on the list that the government approved for getting resources from the Ministry of Finance. So now the construction workers, because they do have an NIS number, cannot go by the Ministry of Social Development and get their grants there because they aren't approved for those grants either. So they are now trapped in limbo. They cannot go to work because they aren't approved to go to work. They aren't essential. They aren't seen as essential. They can't get a grant from the NIS side because they aren't on the approved list. And they can't get a grant from the social development and the social assistance side because they have an NIS number and they aren't on this list either. So what position exactly are you expecting these people to be in? And the vast majority of construction workers are adult males, a lot of them being sometimes sole breadwinners or main breadwinners for middle to lower or lower to lower income families in Trinidad and Tobago. And what do you expect to happen to these families when these men are sent home with no money for a month? And I mean, I'm sorry, but the platitudes that some people like to use and speak about, we're all in this together. The opposition leader, although she herself may be in a yacht, her analogy was correct. We aren't all in the water here struggling the same. Some may be on a raft, some may be on a yacht, some may be on a super yacht, some may be on that last little plank that Jack was holding on to at the end of Titanic that Rose threw him off of and murdered him. We're now into our second week of our state of emergency and well within our lockdown measures. And I think we are seeing some people living up to the Trinidadian legendary name of being tricky daddians. Some people are finding ways to weave around the lockdown measures. If we're saying that the people are at fault for the measures not working, then what is the point having ineffective measures? If the measures cannot work with the people because you cannot get the people to follow them, then you need to get different measures. What is going to happen is if people continue looking around and seeing that it seems like those who skirt the measures and those who attempt to find the loophole and the round the road and the side street measures, those people are the people that are being allowed to continue, then it's going to just be motivation for less and less people to follow the measures that we see are needed to get us out of this situation. And okay, you can say that you're supposed to follow it, not because other people are breaking the rules, you're supposed to follow them, you're supposed to follow these measures because it is what is right and it's what is good for our country and it's what is going to bring us out of this pandemic situation. But that is irrelevant to a lot of people, and to especially some people like those in the construction sector who are seeing that our money is drying up and the help from the government is non-existent. We are on our own. We have to figure out how to survive. And if people have to figure out how to survive, they're going to figure out how to survive. How is Royal Castle providing food without workers? The union writes the company seeking answers. Royal Castle came out into social media with a bang this past week because they're now back on the market. Royal Castle have a grab and go box. You can grab your fried chicken and leave with it. The union representing the workers that work in Royal Castle, they are most confused because the Royal Castle workers are at home. So how is Royal Castle providing this food? Their workers are at home and their workers are unpaid. So who is being paid to provide this food? And if someone else can be paid to cook this food, why can't the workers who are being paid before be paid to cook it the same way? And that's the same thing with these escapes to the lockdown measures. So, okay, if you are saying that Royal Castle couldn't run because we didn't want all of these cooks in the back and all of these chefs in this place and whatever. And now Royal Castle is still running, but now no one knows where it's running from. That doesn't actually stop the measure. And what we are seeing is that the COVID infection rate continues to go on. And I think a lot of it is because there's a lot of business as usual hiding behind the scenes. And not necessarily with the small man. A lot of situations in the world are like that. Spare me a little extra for my last rant, because a lot of situations in the world are like that. When you look at it, the real problematic people, the real problem comes from the large corporations, come from the states, come from the countries, come from the large bodies. But they aim their punitive measures, they aim lots of the attention at the small man. So the main polluters of the ocean are the massive companies. The everyday person is polluting the minor things, and they focus on a plastic straw and give you a paper straw to give your little toddler for them to get it wet and never get into the juice box, because plastic straws are the real problem. No, they aren't. The real problem are the large corporations, but they can't tackle the large corporations. And similarly, in the same pandemic, a lot of places we're seeing this. Within the large corporations, we're hearing new stories coming out every day about some secret spread, about some underhanded activities that happened to decrease the reporting of a spread that did happen within this organization. And it all happens, creates a small little furor, and no one pays attention and they go on, while the smaller businesses remain shut because they are a danger. Now, I agree, they may very well be a danger, but maybe the larger businesses are dangerous too, and maybe we need to fine-tune the measures that we are doing. And if we are saying that we are willing to do anything to stop the spread of this virus, maybe we really need to see exactly where the data points to being the main point and the main spread of this virus. And I think that data isn't very forthcoming. I don't see that data readily available. I want to see exactly where, and I think they would have a bit of that data because they do contact tracing. Where exactly is the majority of the spread occurring? And I think that's a crucial question if you are to really expect people to continue going through a lockdown when a lot of people, for example, those in the construction industry, have no resources. And speaking of resources, I'm trying to get me some new ones too. I'm trying to get me a mic so my voice can come through a little clearer in the recording, probably get a new camera. So if you're interested in sponsoring some, you don't have to. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to continue doing it anyway. But if you're interested in sponsoring some of what is going to happen on this channel, feel free to contact me. And thank you for watching the video. See you in the next one.